Hello everyone, this is your instructor in Capital Market, and for today, our topic is Introduction to Capital Market. This topic covers the basic concepts of capital market. In this video, I will be discussing the basic concepts of capital market. Of course, kapag sinabing basic concepts, hindi nawawala na i-define natin yung term na capital market. So what are capital markets? Capital markets are venues where savings and investments are channeled between the suppliers who have capital and those who are in need of capital. The entities that have capital include retail and institutional investors, while those who seek capital are businesses, governments, and people. So essentially, yung capital market na tinatawag natin is ito yung venue kung saan yung mga tao or individuals or groups or companies that have money that they want to invest in certain endeavors, pwedeng sa businesses din or pwedeng in properties, they have an excess money and they want their money to earn a return or some sort of profit. But although they have an excess money and they want their money to earn a return or some sort of profit, they do not want to do the work themselves. Yung tipong ayaw nilang gumawa ng sariling business or mag-manage ng kanilang own source of income or mag-operate ng kanilang own source of income. So what they want is to simply provide the money. They let other people do the work, and then when they profit, they will get a share of the profit. So ito yung mga tao na tinatawag din nating investors sa madaling sabi. And then, on the other side, meron naman tayong mga tao na nangangailangan ng pera or funding or investment. On the other side, meron namang mga tao na nangangailangan ng pera or funding or investment. Pwede itong mga businesses, government, or people in the form of entrepreneurs. So it's possible that they have existing businesses. Gusto nilang mag-expand, so they need additional funding. They need money. Sa government naman, they have projects that they want to pursue. Pero wala pang available na fund kasi collectibles pa lang ang taxes. They could also ask for investments from the public in the form of treasury bills or treasury bonds. And then, on the part naman ng mga entrepreneurs, normally itong mga entrepreneurs na to, they have great ideas and they have ways to solve problems. They have ways to solve issues or to provide a service that would solve a certain need of the people. But normally, they don't have the capital that they can use to pursue the idea or to make it happen. So, itong mga tao na to na mayroong excess money, and then on the other side, we have here people who are in need of money. So, nagkikita sila in the so-called capital market. Yung capital markets, they are composed of primary and secondary markets. I'm sure na meron na kayong idea dito sa primary market at secondary market kasi nga na-discuss ko na to sa investment and portfolio management. As a recap, ang primary market ay yung market where new securities are sold to investors. Kapag sinabi namang secondary market, this is a market where existing securities are traded. Kapag sinabing existing securities, ito yung mga securities na na-issue na before. These are already issued securities. The most common capital markets are the stock market and the bond market. Stock market refers to the market where regular activities of buying, selling, and issuance of shares of publicly held companies take place. Kaya tinawag na stock market kasi dito tinitrade yung stocks or shares. Dito nangyayari yung pagbenta at pagbili ng stocks or shares. Bond market is the market for the trading and issuance of debt securities. Take note, dito sa bond market, ang may utang ay yung nag-issue ng bonds. Yun yung tinatawag na bond issuer. Usually, ang mga bond issuers ay governments at publicly traded companies. Governments typically issue bonds in order to raise capital to pay down debts or fund infrastructural improvements. Kaya nag-i-issue ng bonds ang government kasi meron silang babayaran na utang o kaya meron silang gagawin na projects. Publicly traded companies issue bonds when they need to finance business expansion projects or maintain ongoing operations. So, between these two markets, mas familiar tayo doon sa stock market. Kasi sa ngayon, kahit mga ordinaryong tao lang, they can already participate in the stock market. Kung gusto nating bumili ng stocks sa mga companies registered in the Philippine Stock Exchange, then pwedeng tayo na mismo ang gumawa. Gagamit lang tayo ng online platforms or gagamit lang tayo ng mga platforms of certain financial institutions na accredited ng PSE or Philippine Stock Exchange. Before kasi, nung wala pang available technology, kung gusto mong bumili ng shares or stocks ng mga companies, kailangan mo ng malaking capital at dadaan ka talaga sa financial institutions, either sa mga banks or brokers or sa mga investment houses. So if you want to buy certain shares of companies, what you need to do is call a broker, tapos sabihin mo kung magkano ang gusto mong i-invest. How many shares do you want to acquire from that company? Pero sa ngayon, with the advent of technology, meron ng mga online platforms na provide ang financial institutions or banks. So, ikaw mismo, pwedeng mag-create ka na lang ng account through their platforms, tapos lagyan mo lang ng funds. Either transfer from your bank accounts or over the counter, OTC. Lalagyan mo ng pera yung account mo, and then you can use that fund or money to buy the shares of companies that you really want. And then also, medyo mas mababa na yung required capital. Pwede ka na ngayong makabili ng let's say 10 shares or 100 shares or 1,000 shares depending on the price of the company's stock. And then you can invest as little as 1,000 pesos if you really want to join the stock market and just try out what it's like to trade stocks. So, mas accessible sa atin ngayon itong stock market. When it comes to bond market naman, medyo parang exclusive pa siya with financial institutions. Na yun nga, old school pa. If you want to invest in bonds, talagang dadaan ka sa financial institutions and it would require a lot of money. I think the lowest is 100,000 pesos, yung mga tipong retail bonds na sinasabi. And of course, you can just acquire them through the financial institutions. And then, yun nga, wala pang available platforms that would allow us to access them on our own. Capital markets seek to improve transactional efficiencies. These markets bring those who hold capital and those seeking capital together and provide a place where entities can exchange securities. Okay? So yung capital market, isipin nyo para siyang palengke. Nandun yung mga nagtitinda and then pumupunta doon yung mga gustong bumili. Pero syempre, dito sa capital market, ang focus dito or yung product ay yung funds or the money or the investment. So, andyan siya, yung mga tao na merong excess money or excess funds, tapos yung mga tao na nangangailangan ng investment or funding. Di lalapit sila or pupunta sila sa capital market to get the money that they need. Of course, merong mga process pa dyan, merong mga requirements, merong mga conditions, merong mga usapan, negotiations between those people who have the money or those people who need the money. So yun yung nagiging role ng capital market. That is not an actual place, pero kumbaga, it's where those two parties meet and where their specific needs are being met. Capital markets refer to the places where savings and investments are moved between suppliers of capital and those who are in need of capital. So normally, capital markets, financial institutions din. Kasi normally, doon naman talaga tayo pumupunta if we want to, let's say in the case of businesses, kapag mag-i-issue sila ng stocks or kapag mag-i-issue sila ng bonds, so they go to the financial institutions. Tapos itong mga financial institutions, sila yung tumutulong sa kanila para mabenta yung financial instruments, yung stocks or yung bonds. Siyempre, binibenta nila itong mga to sa mga tao na may excess money or excess funds. And then, they invest in those stocks or in those bonds. So essentially, financial institutions itong capital markets. But of course, these financial institutions, they do have other services na provide sa public. Hindi lang yung para dito sa mga investors na they want to invest. And then on the other hand, itong mga tao na nangangailangan ng funds, they get the funding. Capital markets consist of the primary market where new securities are issued and sold. So sa primary market, ang ini-issue at binibenta ay new securities. Ini-issue yung securities sa kauna-unahan na buyer or sa kauna-unahan na nag-invest sa kanila. So essentially, yung exchange na yon, that's what we call the primary market. Tapos yung secondary market naman, this is where already issued securities are traded between investors. Kumbaga, na-issue na nila for the first time, tapos yung kauna-unahan na buyer, yung kauna-unahan na investor, pwede nilang ibenta sa other persons. So in that case, it is a transaction between an investor to another investor. Let's say, kailangan na niya ng pera or gusto niyang bitawan yung investment niya. so he can sell it to another investor. And that's what we call the secondary market. Next, understanding capital markets. The term capital market broadly defines the place where various entities trade different financial instruments. These venues may include the stock market, the bond market, and the currency and foreign exchange markets. But of course, financial institutions, they also have that. Most markets are concentrated in major financial centers, including New York, London, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Here in the Philippines, we have PSE, or Philippine Stock Exchange. And then, of course, the financial institutions, they can also provide the venue for the capital market. Capital markets are composed of the suppliers and users of funds. Suppliers include households and the institutions serving them. So example, pension funds. Counterpart dito sa Philippines, we have SSS and GSIS. And then life insurance companies, pwedeng private companies, but of course, SSS and GSIS can also provide this. And then we have various charitable foundations, and then we also have non-financial companies that generate cash beyond their needs for investment. Pwede rin yung mga organizations or businesses that have excess cash na hindi naman nila kailangan sa pag-operate and they want to put it somewhere na mag-generate ng profit or return. Users of funds include home and motor vehicle purchasers. These are specific examples. Non-financial companies and governments financing infrastructure investment and operating expenses. So, una nga, meron tayong mga businesses, either they need it for expansion or nangangailangan sila ng short-term source of cash for their operations. And then, on the part ng government, they probably want to start certain projects, pero since yung taxes are still collectible, since yung budget ng government hindi pa available agad, so what they do is they issue bonds to the public and then the public, they acquire the bonds. Magbibigay sila ng pera sa government para may magamit ang government. Tapos, in return, makakatanggap sila ng interest. Normally, kapag ang government ang nag-issue ng financial instruments, mababa lang yung interest. Kasi nga, very secured naman yung government. So, sure na magkakaroon ng collection of taxes and siguradong mababayaran yung return or yung return ng kanilang investment. Kaya normally, kapag yung government ang issuer ng financial instrument, mababa lang yung interest compared sa private companies or entrepreneurs. Capital markets are used to sell financial products such as equities, yun na nga, shares of stocks, and debt securities, of course, bonds. Equities are stocks which are ownership shares ng isang company. Debt securities, such as bonds, are interest-bearing IOUs. Yung IOUs, galing yan sa words na IOU. May utang ako sa'yo. IOU, galing yan sa IOU. May utang ako sa'yo. So parang loan din or debt, but we call it bonds kapag inisyu siya ng private companies or government. Capital markets are divided into two different categories. Yun na nga, primary markets, where new equity stock and bond issues are sold to investors. And secondary markets, where existing securities are traded. Capital markets are a crucial part of a functioning modern economy because they move money from the people who have it to those who need it for productive use. Kasi normally, itong mga taong may pera, hindi naman nila ginagamit yan sa business. Nakatambay lang doon yung pera, hindi nagagamit. So nagiging stagnant siya, nagiging inactive. Kapag ilalagay yan sa capital market, gagamitin ng mga taong nangangailangan for their businesses. Kumbaga, nagsisirculate yung pera, it's for productive use, to become productive. Kasi yung mga businesses, they employ workers, they buy products from their suppliers, and then they provide products for their customers. So, nagkakaroon ng economic activity. Nakakatulong for economic growth of the country.